Hello menstrual mates, my name is Margot and I'm going to be talking about my experiences with endometriosis. This is something that I deal with and these are my experiences. My experiences aren't anyone else's experiences. If you experience the same thing, I hope this helps. But if not, I just hope this educates you a little bit on what I go through and what other people with endometriosis go through. I would also just like to say that this will be graphic. I'm talking about blood and bodily fluids and things like that, so if you don't like that, this will not be the video for you. Just saying. So endometriosis is when the skin of your uterine lining starts growing outside of your uterus. So it can grow on your fallopian tubes, things like that. Again, I would just like to say I'm not a doctor, so if any of the terms I say are incorrect, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person living with this. So I figure it's best that I just start off with my story. So I started off like having really painful periods. I got my period when I was 14 and they put me on birth control not because I was sexually active, but just because I was in pain. So when I was roughly 21, I went off of birth control for a few different reasons. I went off because of all the chemicals in it. I went off because it's expensive. And lastly, I went off of it because I found I was having breakthrough bleeding, which meant that, so even when I wasn't on my period, I was still bleeding. Finding out now, it has to do with endometriosis, but I didn't know that then. So I was on different birth controls, they kept switching it up and I just still kept having it. So then I thought, well, if my period wants to come at another time and I'm just forcing it to come because of this birth control, I might as well just go off it. So then I did end up asking my doctor about the fact that when I have sex, I bleed. And he ended up just saying, oh, you probably have skin from your uterus growing outside of your uterus, and then that gets hit during sex and it's a lot thinner, so it tears very easily, which again is a sign of endometriosis. And he just like totally brushed it off, but you know, good times. So yeah, that's something that I experienced. I kind of want to do a separate video where I talk about more like sexual experiences and stuff and what it's like going through that with endometriosis. But yeah, so that was the thing. Then in my mid-20s, I ended up going for an ultrasound because I was having blood clots, which is this, it's like, how do I describe it? It's kind of like browny red clumps that come out, and some people get it a little bit. When you have endometriosis, you usually get it quite a bit, which I do. So yeah, it's like you could be standing there and you know, you laugh or something and you're like, oh god, did I just pee? Am I on my period? Is it a blood clot? Is it regular discharge? Who knows? That's the fun part. Anyway, so I went for an ultrasound because of this, and the ultrasound tech, she goes, do you have painful periods? And I was like, oh god, let me tell you. And so yes, I do. And she goes, oh, I thought so. Which normally they're not supposed to say anything, but I liked that she did, because then I ended up going to my doctor and I asked him about it. And I was like, she said this, and he's like, oh yeah, you have cysts all over your ovaries. And it's like, okay, cool. Another sign of endometriosis. That's great. So ultimately, I did end up going to my doctor, and I kind of laid everything out on the table, and he's like, oh, well, you either have PCOS or endometriosis. And so we did some blood work, and if you have PCOS, usually you have higher levels of testosterone and low levels of estrogen, whereas with endometriosis, you apparently don't have that change in hormones, usually. And so we tested my levels, and they were totally fine. So he's like, you have endometriosis. I haven't done any surgeries yet, so what they can do is you can go in for surgery and they can scrape off some of the scar tissue, the buildup that causes the pain. The only thing is it's not a permanent thing. A lot of people with endometriosis end up having to go in for multiple surgeries in order, because the skin keeps growing back, right? So you just have to keep removing it. So I haven't been in for that procedure yet. I was referred to a special endometriosis clinic because we have one nearby, but because we're in this awesome pandemic, I haven't been able to get in yet. And honestly, because of this pandemic, I'm not sure if I'm ever gonna get in, because I have stuff going on in my own life too. So, not sure what the next step is. I definitely want to look into this surgery just so that it can ease some of my pain, so that I can at least move at all. And so yeah. So now, some of the things that I deal with endometriosis. I experience symptoms on and off of my period, which can be normal for some people and not normal for others. So right now I deal with food sensitivities, which is quite common for endometriosis. I am sensitive to dairy, to eggs, and to soy, and a lot of that is because of the estrogen within those products. So higher estrogen levels can apparently inflame or aggravate your endometriosis, so avoiding those foods. And then another thing is alcohol and gluten. Gluten, I find I have waves. I go through times where I can consume it, and I go through times where I can't. I haven't consumed alcohol since I was 19, because I had sensitivities to it then. That's because gluten and alcohol cause inflammation, and so that can also inflame everything that's going on. So yeah. I also get pain while running, and I've had this for a few years now. That's why I used to be a runner and I'm not anymore. So on my runs, I will all of a sudden get this severe pain. I get nausea as though I am on my period, and I usually have to stop. Sometimes I have to sit down if the nausea gets so bad. It feels as though I'm on my really bad day of my period, and I basically just have to, I'm like spitting like crazy. Sometimes I actually puke, and I just have to put my head in between my legs. So honestly, it's put me in a tough situation where sometimes I can barely walk home. So I just kind of avoid running right now, which stinks because I don't do it more for the physical. It helps with mental health, but what can you do? And so the symptoms that I get actually during my period are nausea, where I will usually puke. If I puke once, I won't stop. When I start, I usually puke for about 4 hours straight. because of the wave of nausea and the pain. So I try to keep it down as much as I possibly can, but not always an option. I am in a ton of pain. I'm basically immobilized. I go ghost white. I've had this like at appointments while doing hair, so it definitely affects my day-to-day life. I basically need to be sent home and cancel my clients that day. I get excessive bleeding, so my periods, not always, but a lot of the time, are very heavy. And then lastly, I get the sweet, sweet diarrhea on my period. So it's just kind of the greatest time ever. Love it. I hope this was informative. I hope this helped someone with endometriosis and even people without, because honestly, I didn't learn anything about this in school, and I feel like it's really important. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, when I was like 15 and on my period, and I would tell my mom, and I'd be like, I'm not going to school. Like, I can't. I'm puking. I feel disgusting. And my mom wouldn't believe me, and she'd be like, you know, you can't watch TV then. And I'm like, I don't even care. I'm just gonna sleep in the fetal position. Because that's something that really helps me if I can attempt to get to sleep. And lots of Midol. It doesn't totally help. Like, you take the Midol, and I feel like it like helps me sleep, but doesn't really help with the pain. I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, so I feel as though like when people have kids, when anyone is just like talking about having these symptoms, to be like, you know what you might have, because a freakish amount of people have endometriosis and are undiagnosed and only find out because there is like a chance of infertility with it. Now a lot of them say that like infertility can cause endometriosis, not endometriosis causing infertility. I don't know how that works. I'm not a doctor, but apparently that's a thing. I have not attempted to have children, although with having endometriosis, I have been told that I should just have kids because it'll make it better. Which personally I think is a terrible reason to have children. But apparently that myth has been debunked. Some people do see a relief in symptoms, but some people also don't. Some people also find that when they go through menopause, that helps. Again, some people find that it doesn't. So it's like a coin toss. No idea. So yeah, I hope this shed a little bit of light. I want to make a couple more videos. I doubt this will be a long-term thing because I feel like I can only talk about my uterus so much before you guys don't want to hear it anymore, or I don't want to hear it anymore. And so yeah, I'm going to talk about what it's like with endometriosis and sex. I'm also going to talk about different menstrual products because I feel like people need to know options, and I found some recently. One that I've been using for a while. One is new. Yeah. Bye, menstrual mates. I hope this helped.